Okay, you guys, so what does Brazil and a working class black family have in common? You are about to find out. This is Lauren deLisa Coleman for another episode, special edition, the Inside series for Sundance Film Festival for film.io. We are now jumping over to Brazil live and direct with Gabriel Martins, who
Hi.
is the filmmaker of a film called Mars One that is in this year's festival. And Gabriel, we're just so happy to be able to connect with you. Hopefully, bringing us some sunshine, as we said, from Brazil, since it's summertime there. It was just snowing here a minute ago in New York City. So I'm trying to get the yellow vibe of your background to be like sunshine. But what's up? And thank you for joining us. Let's kick it off by giving our viewers a synopsis of Mars One.
Hi, Lauren. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for the
My
space.
pleasure.
Yeah, Mars One is the story about a family of four, Wellington, Tessia, and the children Eunice and David. David is a very good soccer player, and his father dreams for him to be the next biggest star in Brazil. But David actually wants to be an astrophysicist and participate in the mission called Mars One, which gives the title to the film, to colonize Mars. So we follow this kind of struggle, this kid having this dream, his father wanting something else. And we followed the mother that starts to have kind of an existential crisis, and the daughter who falls in love with another girl, and that becomes also a problem with the parents. So it's a film about generation gap, about understanding, empathy, and especially about having dreams. Yeah.
Which I think is so great, and there's nothing really that unusual about that story, except that you decided to put people of color in it from Brazil, and we
Yeah.
don't get to see, these people, and that's what makes this so interesting, and why Sundance Film Festival overall is just always so eye-opening, because even if you've been fortunate enough like me to travel to so many countries, and as I said offline, I've been to Brazil and et cetera, but you still don't always get to see all of the dimensions, right? And when we say Brazil, even at least in the States, and for the most part, you have a certain image that comes to mind. And
Mhm.
it's not the people who are maybe either in the favelas or just a little bit above and living their lives, right? Because that's not glamorous. So it's
Mhm.
very cool that you decided to do this. What brought you to this story, this whole topic?
Yeah, I think about what you said. It's a very new thing in Brazil. Black filmmakers shooting their realities. I have black characters in my film because this is my background, my reality, my family, and also I see that as an importance of representation. And what drives me to the story was this idea of this black kid having such a bold dream, something that was very, very far from his reality. And I just have this image of this kid playing soccer but looking up at the sky. So we have this kind of programmed fate for him being a black kid from the outskirts. You're going to be a soccer player, or you're going to be a musician or something like that. But no, he's reaching for more. He's reaching for maybe something that a kid his age never was able to reach. And I think this is very powerful. So from that start, I begin to unfold the story into other conflicts, other kind of drama, and seeing the importance of having this kind of big goals. This is something that I find it personal because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and that was really far away from my
Right,
reality.
right, right.
I always wanted to do that, and I never knew why. It was just a very passionate desire that was driving me kind of in an obsessed way to become this. So I can relate to David in this story, and I think this is why I did this
Interesting.
film.
Very, very cool, and I'm sure very challenging to pull off because, as you said, it's a new thing to be a black,
Yeah,
filmmaker in Brazil, which is, why should that even be? But, it is, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so, you just have to say it's cool to be a pioneer. Tell me a little bit about what that filmmaking scene is like there, whether it's, black or not. I mean, just filmmaking in Brazil on the indie tip. What is that kind of like day to day there?
Yeah, we have majorly independent cinema scene because we film with mostly low budgets in a way, filmmakers like my own. We have TV stations, we have Netflix, Amazon producing things in Brazil, like just in the US. But the vast majority of filmmakers are totally dependent on state funds. So in the past few years, the past 6 years, we had a lot of problems because the governments was not really interested in developing culture. So cinema and other forms of art was like being cast aside. And with this current government that we have with Jair Bolsonaro, they totally destroyed that because they started kind of a war against press and against artists. And so we reached kind of a very low point in Brazilian cinema when we can't find funds to our films. It's very rare to have someone filming nowadays. And in this sense, this past few years, we also developed a lot of black filmmakers is kind of emerging, is something very new, something that I think happened in the US in the past few years. Suddenly there's all these black filmmakers starting to make feature films, first feature films. In Brazil, we started that, but most of the filmmakers haven't been able to reach the feature films because due to politics, just as I said. So we have a lot of creative people not having access to funds.
Which is really a shame. But, why do you think that at least what little is being started is started? What's do you think is the spark that has generated this whole idea of like the black filmmaker in Brazil? Where's that kind of coming from? Just because it's finally time, or what?
I think many
economics, socioeconomics, the economics of the people. I don't know. Because obviously to be able to do things, unless you're really back in the day, and I mean back in the day, to have time to do something artsy, is not really, if you're trying to survive and just make sure you have your rent paid, etc. The art thing is like a whole nother scenario. So you have to have all the basics covered before you start to get into that world. Is it because maybe the economic foundation is a little more stable, or what is it that has, again, created this environment where now you have the black filmmaker, whereas in 2000 you didn't really have that? Like, do you know what I mean? So what happened?
Mm-hmm. I think in the beginning of 2000, you said you were in Brazil right in the change. In 2002, Lula was elected, and the government of Lula was maybe the first government in Brazil when we started to talk about affirmative action. So this was really something new to Brazil. We're talking about late 2000s.
But it's crazy that it took that long, though, because the I don't want to say the disparities. I want to look at it in a positive way, but the wealth of colors in Brazil and the history, and some of it being German and some that has always been. Not always, but since Brazil had been shall we say, home to other types of people besides indigenous, there has been different types of people. So why just then in 2002 it's like, oh, affirmative action, like let's think about it?
Plain racism, I would say, is just the basic structure of racism and how it operated in Brazil. We didn't have like a civil rights movement.
I was going to say not enough time. And again, in order to be able to do that, you either have to be so far down that you just are like, I have nothing to lose, or you're so busy just on that hamster wheel of trying to keep things afloat that like you don't have enough energy to be involved in activism, even though that might be in your heart. So do you think that was part of it? That's crazy.
Yeah, because the racism subject in Brazil is a very big taboo still nowadays. Now we're talking about it more from the past 10 years, but it always used to be something that we just didn't talk about. We have the majority of the population that is black,
right,
but yet everything is like swept under the rug. I think that would be the correct analogy. You're just sweeping things under the rug. So now the rug is like a mountain of dirt, and you have to deal with that because when you not deal with things just go accumulating. So this is why we have such a late process, because we have a history and not dealing with that. But as I was saying, this government came in the beginning of 2000, affirmative action came in that made black people have more access to college. This is a very important thing. And then more access to information, to criticism. Okay. And then we have now many more black people in the intellectual community, in the arts community, in the journalism community. But this is very new. This is something I'm 34. This is something that is happening in my generation. I'm seeing something very different than my father saw. And this, I think, is also about Mars One. Is also about that this generation gap and how it's difficult for some people, especially from people for other generation, to kind of deal with this new world that we're starting to be in.
Right. It's
So we
just
have a new
fascinating.
process. Yeah.
So, because you are a super pioneer, how challenging or easy was it for you to kind of get this whole project together?
Was challenging. This film was funded by an affirmative action fund destined to Black or producer or directors, and this was one of three films that were granted this fund. It was the first time this fund happened, and this was 2015, and it was the last time because already after everything I said just happened, these shitty governments and everything that happened so on, and then this is the only time that happened. So we have a lot of Black filmmakers with amazing ideas that are just waiting for support to develop their ideas. So this film wouldn't be possible to be made today in this government. I wouldn't have this fund, but back then I had. So I tried to make the best as possible to make this film. And this film being in Sundance is proof that we have many talented people. Our films can reach many places. We can have conversations with other cultures and other experiences like yourself. So this is just something very powerful that is not taken consideration when because of politics and bad politicians and people ill-intended. So but it was hard. It was a strained budget, so we didn't have a lot of time to do this film. We have some struggles, but this is kind of part of our experience. We don't are used to have big budgets to work, so we did our best, and I think we have a good result.
Wow, just, I mean, even more reason to celebrate,
Yeah.
Gabriel. Like, wow. So, given all that, how easy or difficult was it for you to pull together the type of crew that you wanted and be able to cast this and all of that? Were these relationships that you already had, already in other like parts of your life, or like how did that all come together?
Yeah, I think most of the crew are people that we've been working with short films and other feature films my company made. So I think we have a very tight crew that we are developing something together. And this is very awesome, despite being the situation of not knowing exactly what your next project is going to be. But we were able to do many things in the past years. And some of the cast I already have worked before in other projects, but we have the actors who play the children were the first time. So we have a lot of talent in acting as well. So this was something great about Mars One to discover this new talent and see that wow, there are so many great people here that I want to put in film.
Right.
So it was a mixed experience between past experiences in bringing new people together to make this.
Amazing, just amazing. So, given all this, wow, Gabriel, what do you think the future of film is going to be in Brazil?
I think it's a mystery because, as I said, we are very dependent on politics. So this year we have new elections for president. So this is very huge because we have projects being balanced. And the project that wins kind of determine the future. I personally hope that Bolsonaro doesn't win because he destroyed most of the things I love. He's a very racist man. He's a very misogynistic, homophobic man. We have our own version of a Trump, but I think it's worse in many ways. So, and I think Brazil struggled a lot due to the pandemic and even before. So we have a lot of poor people struggling here. We are in a very low point, and this is kind of a pivotal year to Brazil to change that. And so this is the future of cinema kind of depends in that because we have to elect someone that will take this in consideration. The power of Black cinema, the power of Brazilian cinema, Latin cinema, this identity that we have that is very powerful, but we're still very dependent on politics. So this is why I made this film. This is why we are talking about these things because they go side by side. We don't have an actual industry like the US when you make films with that kind of money. We are very dependent on the state, which is also a good thing because it gives us some creative freedom, but it's also something that you have to serve uh, with what you have with the tide, with the kind of moment that you have. So
Wow.
this is a very unsure situation in many ways.
So, given all that, when you got the notification from Sundance, you must have been particularly
Yes,
happy, right?
yes.
Tell me what that was like.
That was awesome because just to being able to talk about the film with people like yourself, with people that are very interested in independent cinema, people that will open doors. Because when I'm talking about this film and all the things I'm saying right now, I'm kind of amplifying other Brazilian voices. You know, I don't see this as something just personal or me being part of a collective in many ways. That is filmmakers from Brazil. So when one film I think reaches a place like Sundance and have this opportunity to spread the message in a way, I think this is a very big win for a community. So this is how I see the selection of Sundance and make me very grateful, very honored to be in this place. And I don't take it for granted. I will try my best to enjoy this, and the crew and cast are everyone is really happy with that. So with this
That's so
premiere,
great. I forgot to ask you though at the beginning, what part of Brazil are you based in?
I'm in Belo Horizonte, which is in the southeast. It's the same geographical region as São Paulo in Rio. Yeah.
Got it, got it. So what's a little bit of your background? Because, as you said, it's been a challenge and continues to be a challenge to create films, yet you've had a lot of other projects that you've done before. How have you made it through like all that, Gabriel? And what's your major secret for just being able to stay with it and make things happen? Because I mean, filmmakers in other parts of the world think that they have it hard, and everybody does when you are trying to create something. But you got like this on top of that. I had an opportunity to speak to another filmmaker who's based in Cuba, and you can imagine that scenario. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's just like unbelievable the strength that you guys have, the resilience and persistence. How do you do that? How do you cope, kind of mentally, or what are like tools that you use, like either psychologically or spiritually or physically, to kind of keep going and stay strong?
Yeah, I think there were many things. First of all, you find crazy people that wants to start this mission of making films with you. So we kind of took turns of one time I'm going to direct these, you guys are going to help me. The next film I'm operating sound, the next film I'm doing the cinematography. So it's kind of this exchanging experience
Oh,
and
that's
finding
cool.
friends to do films.
Yeah.
Very, very low budget. I think my generation also saw a possibility of having cheap equipment to make films. So this was something that previous generations maybe didn't have in my country. So this was we were able to make short films or even small feature films just to test, to kind of practice cinema, to kind of see what the language was all about. So this was something powerful. And then we had a very good period when we have good funds. So we have some money to do short films. We start to have money to do feature films. So through this time, I kind of was able to have this as a profession, to perfect this as being something that I could pay my bills with. So this was like the kind of the place that I started to develop films, like doing very, very low budget, kind of gathering friends and gathering some very small money to do films, and then starting to understand the funds of what kind of thing I could finance, what kind of money, how could I get them to perfect in script writing, to write better projects. So I think it was very kind of a ladder when we started really down having our own personal projects, but kind of making a mark or finding our identity, because some short films we did very cheap went around the world in film festivals. So I met other people, I met filmmakers from other places. So you just we kind of dare to be part of the community, not waiting for someone to let us in, and
Right,
just
right.
making the films and putting to the world and letting the world be the judge in a way.
Just amazing, Gabriel. So look, how can people keep up with what you're doing, support, etc.? What's the best way to, kind of follow you?
Yeah, well, my company is called Filmes de Plástico. If you find us on YouTube, you will be able to find our short films with subtitles, all of our short films. You are able to find us in Instagram. And we are always keeping up with everything we are developing and everything we are putting into the world. And Mars One, you can find info there.
Okay.
Yeah, Mars One in Sundance, and maybe
Coolness.
other places. I hope so. I hope it opens doors.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, just best of luck. And it's
Thank
so
you.
cool to hear you, say your name in your language. It's funny. I had the opportunity to go to Portugal in the
Hmm.
fall, in September. And it was the first time I learned that Portuguese in Portugal is different from
Okay.
Portuguese in Brazil.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really never knew that. So I was, just getting some infos and, learning how to say some different words and all that. But just listening to you just makes me think about that. But I'm just so glad that you are there and, doing your thing and not being held back. You have to just do whatever it is that, your spirit calls you to do, however you can do it. And we are just so glad to be able to give filmmakers like you an outlet that is growing so that you can, talk about not just really the technical aspect, but you as a person and what
Hmm.
your life is like and how that impacts your filmmaking and the stories. That kind of really 360 view, you guys, like nobody else is really out here doing it. So we are just so honored, really, to be able to do this with the Inside series. And so, Gabriel, I just want to thank you so much. I hope that the film
Thank
is
you.
very well received during Sundance 2020, and we will continue to look out for your work. And you
Hmm.
guys do not miss this next interview that I have coming up because we're going to go now from Brazil over to Compton and it's going to be hot. So there you have
Um,
it. I am Lauren deLisa Coleman for the Inside series right here at film.io. Thank you so much for watching.